Hello everyone and welcome to Position Specific and welcome back to our Coaching Journey 2 with a youth development phase team in the USA at grassroots level. We are now into week number 3, so we're going to look at session 4 and session 5 and then a 4-week plan as we're getting to the point now where session 4 and 5 are the last sessions that we have where we could only train with the boys once every 2 weeks because of the high school season. So it's getting to the point now where we can get them back full in our kind of normal routine of training twice a week and having some games as well, which will be great. It feels like forever since we had our last game. And obviously moving into the regional tournament in Hawaii, we need to have some games to get ready for that. So we'll show you the 4-week plan we have building up to that. But let's get into it straight away into week 3. Okay, so as I mentioned before, week 3 we're going to have a look at session 4 and session 5. Session 4 was actually supposed to be session 5, but we had really interesting weather on the day of session 4. So we decided, at one point we thought we were going to have to call the session off completely because we had real strange torrential rain and really cold weather for this time of year in the spring. But as it calmed down a little bit, we decided to go for it. We just decided to change the plan of the session so we could get the boys out together and get the boys moving and keep them moving in quite an intense sort of session, so that we could obviously have the session on in the cold and the boys didn't get too cold and they weren't stood around for too long doing tactical stuff. So we decided to go ahead with it. So what we did is we had a bit of an out of possession theme in terms of we were going to go for some defensive transition stuff again around that kind of react and recover kind of stuff that we've talked about in previous session. But we obviously started the session off with a couple of practices around scanning skills and obviously around scan, move, receive, release, which is one of our performance wheels, which I'll get into in a second when we get into the session. And then we went into some defensive transition stuff in practices 3 and 4. Session 5, which was obviously going to be session 4, was another out of possession theme session, but this time it was all around kind of individual defending skills, again relating back to our out of possession performance wheel, which I'll touch on as we get into that session. And we had another practice where we had a defensive organisation session and we worked on some team compactness, whether that be vertical or horizontal. But I'll get into that in some detail as we get into session 5. Okay, so we decided to go for defensive transition theme in session 4. So reminder again of our performance wheel around defensive transition and our key language, which is react, recover and regroup. So obviously when we're in defensive transition is obviously triggered as soon as we lose possession of the ball anywhere on the pitch. So a lot of the practices we'll do around defensive transition will actually start with the ball in possession, which you'll see in the practices, and then obviously we're looking at that moment where it turns over to the opposition and how we can react and hopefully regain possession as quick as possible. But if we can't, can we recover and regroup? Our objective is to win the ball or force a mistake within 3 passes after losing possession anywhere on the pitch. And obviously, relating back to that game model and our targets, we have an 80% target of regaining possession within those 3 passes. But before we get into all that, we wanted to do some in-possession stuff around our youth model and make sure that we were still touching on some in-possession stuff even though we had an out-of-possession kind of theme. So what we did is practice 1 was a technical practice and it all revolved around our in-possession performance wheels, which is in our youth model curriculum, which is obviously part of what we do on our website. But this is what we're looking at in terms of the in-possession stuff. So we have scanning, moving, receiving and releasing. And scanning's all around seeing 2-3 different things. So seeing the ball, seeing the danger and seeing the player's next move. Movement is looking for spaces beyond, below and beside the opposition. Receiving skills is open body, back foot to progress forward if you've got some time and space. If not, closed body, front foot to protect the ball and retain possession. And then our releasing skills are all around seeing it early, doing it quickly and executing with quality. So what we did is we took that or had that idea and went into a scanning skills technical practice to start with. And obviously like we've do a lot of these scanning skills technical practices and try to hit scanning as much as possible. Interesting one in terms of our evolution over the last few years is how we actually do scanning skills technical practices. And for me, it's really important that you always have moving parts when you're working on scanning, just effectively like it is for the normal game. Like when we first started doing scanning skills years and years ago, we'd have kind of little triggers of holding up different colour cones, holding up different colour bibs, holding up one arm or two arms for players to look over the shoulder and to scan for. But we got to the point where we preferred to have moving parts, and this particular practice is a really good like kind of little twist on a normal kind of passing exercise, like as you can see here around a triangle. But it just allows players to obviously move into different spaces and obviously to be able to scan as well as much as possible. So really simple. So this technical passing practice has obviously a focus on scanning. Player organised into two teams, and obviously you bib up the two teams. So in this particular case, in this picture here that we have, you've got a white team and a yellow team, and all they're going to do is really simple. Is they're just going to move the ball around the triangle to each other, going the same way as the other team. And as you'll see here, so the whites are going to pass the ball clockwise around the triangle, and the yellows are going to do exactly the same thing. And then obviously, like you work 2 minutes one direction, and then you work 2 minutes in the counterclockwise direction. But as you can see here, you're just asking players to like move 2-3 yards away from the cone, whether that's like inside or outside or further away from the cone, or coming towards the ball a little bit, but you're just asking them to constantly be on the move away from that cone, and then it just allows a little bit of chaos and a little bit of traffic, and you're just looking for players to be able to like scan for obviously the player they're sharing the cone with, so they move away from them into space. They're obviously going to be scanning for the ball, and then they're going to be scanning for the next move, which is passing to the teammate, and just trying to encourage the players to scan as much as possible before they actually receive the ball. Because what a lot of players do is, what a lot of young players do is they have the first touch and then then the first scan comes, and usually that can be a little bit too late depending on what level you're playing at. So just encouraging the players to just scan as much as possible before they get the ball, and this is a really good little exercise for just creating a little bit of chaos and having them scan as much as possible. So we went for a larger area size in terms of the triangle, so it's about 16 by 16, and we had 6 players working in each area, and we just did 2 minutes on each direction, which took about 8 to 10 minutes with a little bit of a break in between. So the other good thing about this is as well is obviously the focus is scanning, but it just gets us into that kind of scan, move, receive, release, which is our full performance wheel. And encouraging the boys to move into spaces, think about the receiving skills in terms of open body and back foot, and obviously have the quality of the releasing skills in terms of the passing. So receiving with the insides of the feet and passing with the insides of the feet as much as possible. But let's have a look at the players doing this live. And as I mentioned before, it just gets players thinking about moving and thinking about scanning. So as you can see here, so 2 teams, green and red, and they're just moving off the cones as much as possible, scanning for the teammate, moving into space. If you just watch the heads as well, you'll just see that they're just having a quick scan for where the teammate is in terms of the next pass. Again, apologies about the video. Again, obviously we're using the VO, and sometimes it's fantastic and sometimes it can be a little bit unpredictable, and we'll miss people out. But as you can see, just going in the opposite direction this time. So again, it just allows that scanning, that little bit of chaos, that moving away from the opposition player on the cone, and then they can think about everything else in terms of the movement, where they're going to move in relation to their cone, whether they're going to move inside it or outside it, or a bit further away from it, or even come into the triangle. That's all okay. Just try and keep them 2 or 3 yards away from the cone, instead of obviously moving too far away. But then that just allows them to think about kind of that body shape, having an open body, receiving on the back foot, using the insides of the feet to control it and pass it, and using both feet, which obviously relates back to our foundation model and the basics. And as I said just before, like just executing that quality of the pass and punching that pass in so it gets there nice and quickly. After that, we moved into a little bit of a skill practice just to keep that scanning going and that moving, receiving and releasing going as well. So what we did is we had a little skill practice focusing on scanning. The players were split up into groups of 6 again, and we just played a 4v2 rondo with 2 footballs. So effectively, all we asked the possession team to do was just to keep possession of the 2 footballs. And we asked the defending team to try and get the footballs out of the square as quick as possible, whether that was by passing it out the square or dribbling it out the square. And I don't know if you've done this, if you've done a rondo and stuff with 2 footballs before, but it is brilliant for scanning and the rest of our performance wheel that we talked about as well, but particularly for scanning as well, because you get players in situations where if they're not under pressure from the 2 defenders, then obviously they can hold on to the ball. You'll get kind of situations where they have to look before they pass it, because who are they going to pass to might already have a ball. And obviously, like, then you'll get the little scenarios in terms of, you might get a little bit of a 1v1 where they have to dribble and protect it. You might get a little bit of a 2v2 where movement becomes really important, or you might have a bit of a 3v2, and then obviously it's finding the spare player. So they're just brilliant, and not only for the what we're talking about in terms of scan, move, receive, release, but it just brings out lots of little scenarios within the 4v2 as well with those two footballs. So again, we went for an area size which is, I think it was about 18 by 18, so we didn't have it too big. Because obviously, like, some of our players, or a lot of our players, are getting quite good at keeping possession. So if you have a larger area size, then it just gives the defenders no chance, really. So we'd have a little bit of a smaller area size in terms of this, for the players to be able to obviously execute what we're asking them to execute, but also gives the defenders a little bit of a chance as well. So 6 players in the area. We played 4 minutes a game. So what happened is, if both balls went out the square, we just changed over the defenders, and the players just continued to play, and the clock just ran for 4 minutes. We had 2 rounds of this, which took about 10 to 12 minutes with the break in between. Okay, so let's have a look at the boys doing this for real. And as I said before, just mentioned previously, just have a look at the heads when you're watching this practice. And like I said, starting off with 2 balls, trying to keep possession of 2 balls. And then obviously, if one goes out, then you end up keeping possession of 1 ball against the 2. But just lots of good opportunities for scanning, especially scanning for both balls, scanning for the defenders, scanning for your teammates. You can't just watch 1 ball, because obviously someone might need to pass to you. You can't just watch the defenders, because you don't know where the ball is. And obviously you've got to make sure that you're scanning, because if you pass to a teammate who's already got a ball, then you could be in a little bit of trouble. So lots of opportunities for scanning, but these games are just brilliant. It's a real good challenge. The players love it, and it's a real good opportunity to have lots of scanning, and then obviously from that you get lots of moving, receiving and releasing, and obviously a good little defensive transition moment there, where the attacking player won the ball back off the defender and obviously able to keep possession again. So you get lots of little scenarios in this game as well, as you can see here. So a little bit of a 2v2 into a little bit of a 1v1, and then obviously finding the free player in that 4v2 as well. And you get more of the little scenarios when there's 2 balls in. But if you've never tried this before, really recommend that you do, whether you play 3v2 and 2 balls, whether you play 4v2 like we are here with 2 balls, or whether you do 6v3 with 3 balls, etc. It's just great opportunities for lots of scanning, moving and receiving and releasing, which you can see here from the boys. And you see lots of the little scenarios coming out here as well. But this is the best example of them probably keeping possession of both balls until one goes out, and obviously then they keep possession of the 1 ball, and try and maintain that possession of that 1 ball as well. But like I said before, it's just brilliant in terms of for the scanning, and making sure that they're not just staring at one thing, they're constantly looking for 2-3 things, which includes the ball, the defenders, and the next move, which is where their teammates are. Okay, so from that we moved into our defensive transition practices of the session, and obviously having that focus of defensive transition in overall, but into practice 3, and obviously focusing on that react part again. So making sure that players are in possession, keeping possession, and then as soon as they lose it, can they react quickly and win it back within those 3 passes, and then get back to the attacking transition and attacking organisation, which is what we want to be in majority of the time within the game model. So obviously having these moments where we're reacting really quickly are really important. So really simple practice to follow up from in terms of that reacting, and we following up from the previous little practice we did as well. So we kind of kept that same area and kept that rondo theme going of 4v2. This time a little twist on it though. So the 4 players in possession were attempting to keep 6 passes away from the 2 defenders. If they got 6 passes, they scored a goal. If the 2 defenders won possession, then they could score in either of the mini goals. And what we did for the defenders was, because we're using a largish size of area in terms of like a 4v2 from the previous practice, and we said that if the defenders score in either goal, they get 2 goals. So they have an extra incentive to obviously run around and defend and work hard and work together. But obviously when they won possession as well, they could score in either goal, and that was able for them to get two goals for that as well. So they could quickly catch up to the attacking team if the attacking team were doing a good job of keeping possession. But really straightforward game. Like I said, we're using the same area size, 18 by 18, 6 players. We paired the players off so that every time that we went through the games, they just swapped with each other in terms of the pairs. And we played 3 games, so we had each pair defending once. And each game was about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So just from a coaching point of view, like I was watching one game and the other coach was watching the other because we had 2 of these set up. But all you'll see is like if the defenders are doing quite well, then you can keep the practice going for a little bit longer. If they're getting if the attacking team are keeping possession really well and defenders are struggling, then you might just keep it to 1.5 minutes. But we did 1.5 to 2 minutes, and we played 3 games at that, which with the breaks in between took about 10 to 12 minutes. But let's have a look at the players doing this live. And again, like I mentioned before, I love these little games. I'm just going to freeze it here just as we show you the setup in terms of the area. So as you can see here, so the area is just set up with 2 goals at each end. And as you can see here, the green team are obviously going to be the team in possession, defending, keeping the ball against the red team. Also, as well, if the green team played the ball out of the square, then the coach will play the ball into the red team, so they'd have an opportunity to score. And obviously, if it went out of the red team, then the ball went back into the green. So normal kind of football rules in terms of when the ball went out of play or it went dead. But as you can see here, so these little games are absolutely brilliant, not just for defensive transition, but you can you can get all the moments of the game in this little 4v2 rondo. And what I mean by that is that obviously we've got a focus of defensive transition, but whenever you do transitions, whenever you have a focus of defensive or attacking, you get both anyway. But what you can see here from the green team is the green team is set up in kind of those positions where they're in the middle of the line of each side of the square, and that just allows them to move along the line and support the teammates really quickly, which you will see when the game gets going. But it also, if you see the 2 that are close to being able to defend the goals if they lose possession as well. So again, like thinking about having attacking organisation shape that even if you keep in possession, you're ready to defend and you're in the best possible positions to defend as well. And then obviously if they lose the ball, they have that defensive transition moment, win it back into attacking transition to keep it for 2 or 3 passes, and then get this shape back again for attacking organisation. And then the defensive organisation for the Reds is just trying to work together to win the ball and try and not have any passes being played through them, try and force it around them as well. But that's the setup anyway, and as you'll see here, from the Greens keeping good possession, we do get little transitional moments when obviously someone makes a mistake or the Reds do a really good job and win the ball back. But like here, so managed to keep that anyway with a little bit of luck. But as I said, the defenders have forced a bit of a mistake there. Greens actually get it kind of almost back to normal here. Another little mistake coming up just about here where they lose it. Good little win back into attacking transition. Still not quite comfortable in terms of attacking organisation, but when they get control of the ball here, good little bit of attacking transition there to keep it for that's 1 pass, 2 passes, and then 3 passes, and then you're back into your attacking organisation and keeping the ball comfortably off the red players. But really good little react in the defensive transition from those couple of little in possession mistakes, which happened there's 2 little mistakes, and then obviously managed to get control of the ball again without conceding a goal. And then from that, you're just looking for those moments all the time. So as you can see here, Greens keeping possession, lost it a little bit there. Real good react to try and win it back. Ends up going out off the green, so the Reds get it again. A good little reaction again though, trying to get possession of the ball again, which they managed to do. And then they're into attacking transition and into attacking organisation and keeping the ball again, which they managed to do for 3 passes, and then they're in a comfortable and a controlled state again. But those are the little moments you're always looking for, and these games are absolutely brilliant for that. And I said that before, I love these little games, and so do the players. And then what we did from here, just to make it a little bit harder, we actually went to 3v3, and we had one team trying to score in the goals and one team just trying to keep possession. I think we had 4 passes for a goal in this one, but it's just a little bit harder when it's equal numbers. And when it's equal numbers, obviously, like you don't just rely on the passes, you go back to relying on those dribbling skills and those twisting and turning skills. But as you'll see here, so ball goes into the Reds here from the Greens, from it going out. And you're just looking for that reaction again. So real quickly, reaction, can you defend the both goals, which they do really well here. Not quite got control of the ball though, but again, reacting, putting pressure on the defending, forcing a mistake. Now they get the opportunity to get the ball back and to go again in terms of trying to get those 4 passes for a goal. But again, like just when you go from like an overload situation to equal number situation, it just makes it a little bit harder, and the players have to think a little bit quicker. But again, you're just looking for those same moments again, like that one there. Look, not quite the good reaction, but still enough to force a mistake and get the Greens the ball back. Okay, and then from there we went into practice 4, which is a similar little reaction practice again in the defensive transition moments. And I'll just show you the kind of the setup and how this game works. So a little 2v2. The players love this game as well. So you're getting the best of both worlds as well, really, where you're actually working on the game model in a small little skill practice. But obviously, like the players enjoy these little games a lot as well, as much as they're getting out of it. So this little skill practice, all about defensive transition, obviously playing a little 2v2, and how it works is the 2 white players in the picture here are going to start the practice off against the 2 green defenders in that first area. So the whites are just going to build up and try and score in the little goal in the 2v2. As soon as they score or the ball goes dead, they've got to react and run into the second area and defend against the red team as quick as possible. And obviously once they've defended against the Reds and the Reds have scored a goal or the ball's gone out of play, then the Reds will then run into the second area and defend against the Blues as well. So again, just a real little transition moment of a game where players, like again, playing 2v2, nice and sharp, but in possession again, moving to that defensive transition and that out of possession and trying to get them to react really quickly. We use an area size here of 40 by length and 20 by width. And there's a little bit of about 2 or 3 yard gap in between the goals. And we had 10 players for this practice, but you can do it with as many as you want, as long as you've got kind of even numbers and they're in twos. But we played 3 games at 3 minutes. So when you'll see in a minute, when the game's flowing, we just allowed that to flow for 3 minutes. We had a little break, boys got a drink, and then we played another 2 games on top of that, which took about 12 to 15 minutes. But it was really interesting in this game as well. Is like, let me just show you the setup first in terms of the game and how it kind of works. Apologies for the camera again. A little bit. I think there's a couple of areas here where it's out of shot. But as you can see here, Blues attacking against the Oranges, trying to score a goal in a 2v2. What we did say to the defenders, if you win it, you can score in the goals, you can dribble it out the area, it's up to you. But then obviously, like the Blues then sprint to defend against the Reds as quick as possible. Then the Reds are obviously, as soon as their attacking bit's over, they sprint into the area. And you get a lot of these moments sometimes where there's lots of quick goals scored and lots of quick turnovers scored as well. But so what we said to the players was, which was, because it was quite interesting in this, we said to the players as well, I'm just going to stop the video here in a second. We talked to the players about having a little bit more of a patient build-up and getting closer to the goals before they try to score, just purely because sometimes, like, you know what players are like, they'll take a touch out of their feet and they'll try and score straight away. Then they've got a bigger distance to run to be able to have that defensive transition. So we just talked to the players about having a little bit more of a patient build-up and then scoring in the goals. And then as soon as that happened, they've got a little bit of a less distance to run to obviously try and affect the attacking team that they're then defending against. So, and again, you're just looking for those moments again. So like you'll see here, so the yellow team just building up, getting as close to the goals as possible in their build-up. And then obviously like scoring the goal, and then obviously they've got not a bit far distance, but you're just looking for those moments here now where they can slow the opposition team down in the defensive transition and force them into a mistake where they don't score a goal. And that's all you're looking for really in these moments. There's another good one coming up here where the 2 Oranges here, so a little steady build up, making sure they get as close to the goals as possible before they can score. So working that 2v2 as much as possible. Moving the defenders from side to side in the attacking moment, and then as soon as they get into the defensive moment, which you'll see in a second, from here, as soon as they score, they're in a better distance now to affect this one here, and that's a great little block there. So just affecting it and stopping the opposition from scoring and those little moments where we go from attacking transition in possession to then reacting really quickly and get into there and trying to stop the next goal as soon as possible. Okay, so that's it for session 4. So let's now have a look at session 5, which is all around defensive organisation and mainly being in a compact state as a team, vertically and horizontally. But we'll get into some of that detail as we get on into this session. But the first part of the session was all about individual defending. So we tapped into our youth model out of possession, which is part of our curriculum on our website. If you want to check out more of that, then you can visit there. But what we did is we had a bit of a technical circuit to start with. So we had 4 practices in this technical circuit, and it was all around individual defending, which relates to our out of possession performance wheel, which you can see now. So as I've talked about before, in possession performance wheel and the scan, move, receive, release, our out of possession performance wheel is very similar in that we have scan, move, which is the same as in possession, but then we have dictate and defend for the out of possession. So scanning is all around seeing the ball, seeing your unit and seeing the danger. Moving is adjusting footwork and body shape in relation to the attacker and the ball. And then dictating is all around denying, delaying and deflecting or forcing the opposition where you want them to go. And then finally defending, which is winning the ball cleanly or forcing the opposition into a mistake. So our technical circuit was all going to be around those 4 actions. Or mainly around 3 actions, as we had a focus of the whole session in terms of an individual around movement and body shape and footwork. And we talked to the boys before the session started around having that side-on body position no matter what they were doing within the practice in terms of individual defending. So having that side-on body position, that side-on body profile, so you are ready to move both ways when the ball is rolling. So obviously being able to move quickly off your back foot to go forward, and being able to move quickly off your front foot to go backwards. So we had that kind of little individual theme all the way through. So we had a scanning practice, we had a dictating practice, and then we actually had 2 defending practices within this circuit to make up the 4 practices, and we spent about 3 or 4 minutes on each of those. Just before we get into the first one, which is going to be scanning skills, just to let you guys know and give you a bit of a profile on this kind of out of possession session, we actually had a bit of a 3v3 tournament to warm up with as the boys were arriving, and got them into that ASAP, and just got them to have a little bit of a feel of a ball, have a little bit of a play, because I always feel around out of possession practices that it's not as interesting for the boys as the in possession stuff and having the ball and touching the ball, because obviously a lot of it is working without the ball. So to have a little bit of a carrot, we had a bit of a 3v3 tournament to start with, and then obviously we went through the defending parts and the out of possession parts of the session, and then we had a little bit of a 3v3 tournament at the end as well. And I kind of sold it to the boys that like the defending circuit would be like 3 to 4 minutes of each practice, and then we'd move into a bit of a team-specific defensive organisation practice, which would be about 15-20 minutes, and then we'd be back into the 3v3. I don't really need, these boys are really good, I don't really need to sell it to them, but that's kind of my approach all the time when I'm doing out of possession practices. I saw a podcast with Eddie Howe at Newcastle United a few weeks ago, and he talked about how he prefers to do in possession coaching, he prefers to do in possession practices and sessions, and I pretty much put myself in that bracket as well. I prefer doing all the in possession stuff, but I do appreciate how important the out of possession stuff is, and how important it is, especially in development and developing these kids into having and these players into having those individual defending techniques down, and obviously being nice and compact as a team as well. But so the first one we did is, now that's out of the way, we did a scanning skills technical practice, and as you can see here, so this practice, as you can see in the picture where it's set up, so the white number 11 is going to be the defending player, the red number 8 is going to start on the ball, and they're going to play to either one of the red players on the side of the square, who then play to the red number 5 at the end of the square. While that's happening, the 11 is going to pop out and jump and try and press the red number 5 who's receiving the pass at the end of the square. The red number 8 who played the initial pass is then going to move in between those 2 big cones, either way in between, and the red number 5 is going to try and play a pass back to the red number 8. In this time, the white number 11 is going to try and scan, see where he's moved, and then intercept the pass like he just did then, and then recover 100% back to where he started from, and then go again. And no matter what happens, whether they manage to block or intercept that pass, or they don't, they have to recover 100% back to where they started, and you'll see a a funny example of that in a second from one of the boys. But we used a medium area size here, so we had a 20 by 10 size area. We had 11 players on the day, so we split them into two groups of 5 and 6 to work through these 4 individual defensive practices. And effectively we did about 6 actions each, not quite the 8 that it says here, but the players had 6 goes each at jumping out and then moving, scanning, and then obviously trying to defend that pass as well. But we actually did each little practice for around 4 minutes, and then they moved on in a little circuit. But let's have a look at the players doing this for real. So we'll have a look at the setup in terms of how it works, and I'll just freeze it before we start so you can see exactly what we're looking at. And as you'll see here, so the ball's about to go to the player on the right there in the picture, and the player behind the person playing the ball is going to jump out, and he's going to move in between the area, have a little scan for the player that he's just left, and try and block that initial pass. And like I said, you'll be able to see the heads turning here as they move and they have a little scan, and the player's going to move. And this is the example that we didn't want the players to do. So having that break there before I told him about recovering as well. So we wanted to recover as quick as possible, and these are really good examples of it anyway. So a good scan over his shoulder looking for the player, a good couple of scans, blocks the pass, and then recovers immediately afterwards as well. And then another good example of that coming up here, where the player again pops out, has a good scan over his shoulder in the press, manages to block the pass, and then a little bit of a break, but still ends up recovering quicker as well. So again, it's just a real good practice in terms of we're pretty much a pressing team, which we'll get onto later in the coaching journey. But what we try and do is when we're pressing is obviously we're always talking about cutting off the pass to whoever you're kind of jumping from and pressing from. Because it's important, especially when you're pressing in high areas of the pitch, that obviously you're outnumbered, so you're going to have to jump from one player to another player and change your mark, and it's important to be able to scan while you're doing that and cut that pass off to the player that you've left. Okay, so the next little individual technical practice that we did was all about dictating skills, and in this case denying. So this was a little 1v1 practice. We don't go into everything that's here, but we just did the 1v1 back pressure practice here. So all you'll see here is, so what happened here is, like as you can see, we've got a smaller square and a bigger square. So this back pressure one is where the 2 players will come out into the bigger square. The defending player will receive the ball. The attacking player, will receive the ball, and then they're just going to try and get around the defending player and get back into the little square, as you can see in the video that's playing here. And then the white defender is just trying not to let him get back into that square. So trying to obviously defending from behind, giving him back pressure. They're just trying to not help let them turn and force them back the way they came, or then try and win the ball and play it back to the player that played into them. And you can do this as well in front pressure and allowing the defender to come out and turn and then go and put the pressure on and defend from the front. But we just decided that we were going to do this in terms of defending from behind and having that back pressure instead. So we had a 30 by 10 area. So the small box was 10 by 10 and the bigger box was 20 by 10. We had, I think, about 5 players working in this practice, and again, each player had 6 goes at defending from behind and applying that back pressure in another 4-minute little circuit. But let's have a look at the players doing this live. And again, remember I said before, we're trying to get the players to have that side-on defending position instead of being square on and flat-footed, having that side on. There's a couple of good examples about it here in terms of setup. So as you can see here, he's received it in the big box and he's going to try and get into the little box. Real good example of defending from behind, not letting him turn and then able to steal the ball off him. Another good example here, a little bit of a longer one here, but look at the body shape of the defending player here. He's always trying to get himself side on. As I said, keeps changing, good footwork, good movement, side on, not letting the player turn face to face, and then eventually winning the ball and forcing the attacker into a mistake. And then last good example here again, good example of body shape again when he finally gets the brakes on, but again side on, trying to defend properly, trying not to let the attacker turn, trying keeping him facing the same way, and then eventually forces him into a little mistake, possibly a little bit of a foul, but that's okay as well. Okay, so moving on to the next one. The next one, we actually had 2 defending practices because obviously we had that individual movement, footwork and body shape going on throughout. So this practice was all about anticipating and intercepting. So just a real straightforward little practice. And what I should mention here is actually this little defending circuit and these little practices are actually Marcelo Bielsa inspired from when we worked at the same club as him. and how he set up all little moments of the games in all these little practices. But I've just found, like, after seeing all that and setting up a little circuit like this, it just really helps players develop the individual defending skills. And no more so than this one here. So this is a practice all about anticipating and obviously intercepting the ball. So if you can see on the left hand side of the picture there, the smaller area size. So we just worked over 10 yards in this one, and obviously we had two red attackers playing the ball between themselves, and then the white player is just going to pick the right time to step in front and intercept the ball. Little bit of detail again. We talked about that side on body position, and if they stepped round the defender's left shoulder, they were going to step in with the right foot. If they stepped around the defender's left shoulder, they were going to right shoulder. Sorry, they were going to step in with their left foot. And like I said, as you can see there, they're just going to step in, pick the right time to step in and intercept the ball. And we tried to talk to the players about the timing and not being in there waiting for it and stepping in and arriving at the same time as the ball. So we used a little a 10 yard by 5 yard area. Again, we had 6 players working in this practice. Again, they had 6-7 goes each. And again, another 4 minute little practice. And you can do this over a bigger distance, but we just chose to do it over the smaller distance. Okay, so let's have a look at the players doing this live. And if you just look at the first group in this video, and as I see, just passing the ball between them over the 10 yards, and the defender's just going to wait for the right time to step around. But you see how he stepped around the left shoulder with his right foot, and then he'll go back, and again, just nice sharp little passes in between, and then just steps around with his left foot around the right shoulder, just to keep in balance and win the ball. And then looking at the good examples, so if you look at the second group in this part 2 of a good example, so as I said, like nice little sharp passes, try and get the players to punch the passes as quick as possible, probably a little bit sharper than this to be fair, but again, just good example of good timing, when to step around using the right foot. And then if we just go back to the first group in this video, as you'll see here again, side on body position, steps around the right shoulder with his left foot and intercepts the ball. And it doesn't look like much, but through experience and doing this over like a few years now, it really does help the players get the timing right of when to read, when to step in. So it's a good one for reading the game, and then obviously the different little techniques and little things we talk to the players about to get them to step in at the right time and not arrive before the ball, arrive at the same time, and obviously step in with the right foot as well to keep them balanced. Okay, the final little practice we had in this individual defending circuit was a heading practice, and we did this slightly different to what this is kind of showing here in terms of the video and in terms of what's in the practice detail here, but it's a really similar setup. So what we tried to do is we had a little 20-yard kind of heading practice where the players were moving backwards to head the ball, and they were moving forwards to head the ball, and they also we had then over a bigger distance, over 40 distance, they were then heading an aerial driven pass. As it's all kind of different timings from the smaller distances and the kind of the looped little opportunities to head it, and then obviously judging how to head an aerial pass is obviously a little bit different. But again, like in terms of, we had like the mannequins, the cones set up. Again, we had players moving backwards in between mannequins, we had them moving forward in between mannequins, and then we had them kind of judging when to move and how to move backwards in terms of an aerial pass as well. So we did it over a couple of different distances, over 20 yards and 40 yards. We had 5 players in this practice, and they actually only did 6 headers each. I know obviously there's a lot of controversy going around at the moment about heading and what age you can head it out, what age you can't head it at, and how many headers that players should be doing in practice and in training sessions. But we just kept it to 6 headers in terms of this particular little practice, again, which took about 4 minutes for them to get through that. So let's have a look at them doing this live. And the first couple of examples here, you'll see in terms of the moving backwards in part 1. So we just got players to stand about 10-15 yards away and just loop the ball up so they had opportunities to head it away. Again, trying to get them to get that side on position and be able to move backwards nice and sharp. And as you can see from some of the examples here, these players really we need to continue to work on heading, but again, like they've only been playing 11. They've been playing 11-a-side for 2 years, and over here in America, they can't head it until they start playing 11-a-side. So it's a bit alien to them in terms of heading it. But we're trying to get them used to heading it as much as we can again. But a couple of little things we said here in terms of technique, apart from that side on body position, was obviously moving your feet and judging the ball, and then trying to jump and meet it at its highest point, and again trying to close your eyes at the latest possible moment as well, in terms of obviously if you close your eyes too early, then it's got a possibility of hitting you in the face or hitting you on the top of the head, which obviously hurts, and then it'll kind of put the fear in players about heading it. So it's important to keep your eyes open as long as possible, which then obviously allows you to get it on that forehead, which is the hardest part of the head, and gives you that opportunity to head it as far away as possible. But like I said, just 6 headers, 2 moving backwards, 2 moving forwards, and then 2 judging and moving in terms of an aerial pass. Just getting the players used to and competing for those aerial duels is really important, especially the way we want to play. Okay, so the final part of this practice was all around defensive organisation and team compactness in this practice too. And I'm just going to go into a couple of reasons why we were doing this, and going back to the game model again around the 4 phases, which I'm sure you guys are well aware of now. I've seen as I mentioned it a couple of times, but just having those 4 phases and working around the 4 phases is obviously really good for you in terms of your organisation. And keeping and helping you obviously plan your sessions around your game model and stuff, like I'm hopefully showing you within this coaching journey. But we were just going to focus on defensive organisation for this particular part of the practice. So our language in that was deny, deflect and defend. So obviously that's denying space, whether that's vertical or horizontal. We obviously want to deflect the play wide or into wide areas and use a touchline as an extra defender. And then obviously we want to defend and try and win the ball back or force the opposition into a mistake. So we have 2 parts of defending organisation. So we have high press, which is obviously winning the ball in the attacking half of the pitch, and we want to do that 80% of the time if we can. And then we have low press in terms of winning the ball in our own defensive half of the pitch, and again that's 80% as well. Because what happens sometimes is if you settle for a high press and the opposition go longer, then you can end up defending a little bit deeper straight away and getting into that low press, or inevitably, because high pressing is really hard, and obviously you're outnumbered in terms of those areas of the pitch, and defending in a underload, then obviously it's inevitable that your press at times is going to get broken, and it's not a case of if it happens, it's actually a case of when it happens. So then obviously being able to drop and defend a little bit lower in the pitch is really important. And obviously we call it high press and low press because we just think no matter where we are on the pitch, if we're high on the pitch in terms of the opposition's half, or we're low in our own half, we still want to be aggressive and have pressure, and put pressure on the ball and try and win it back as quickly as possible. Even if we're defending lower and on the edge of our box and close to our own goal, we still want to have those moments of putting pressure on and being aggressive and trying to win the ball back. We don't like the word block, which is used on lots of coaching qualifications, because we just feel as though block just puts in a player's mindset of like, well, we're just going to sit here and we're just going to try and block. We want to press, and even if we're low in the pitch, and win the ball back. So defensive organisation is just a little bit more of the key detail in terms of the language and the deny, and deflect and defend, or the 3 Ds we like to call it. So when we're in defensive organisation, so the opposition achieve 3+ passes in that defensive transition that we talk about anywhere on the pitch. So we're in defensive transition, we obviously want it back in 3. If it goes past the 3, then the opposition or the opposition might have a dead ball situation, goal kicks, free kicks, throw-ins, corners, etc. We want to get into an organised state as quick as possible. So our objective is to high press, like I mentioned, to win and force the opposition into make a mistake in the attacking half, or low press and stop the opposition entering our 18-yard box. And obviously the targets around that, like I mentioned before, are all about trying to have that higher percentage of winning the balls. So 50% in the opposition's half in terms of winning the direct duels is a success, and low press 75% first contact clear in the box is obviously a success as well. And that's what part of the individual defending was all around. So making sure that even though when we're operating in a team, the individual defending's on there as well to help us have success in those targets. So obviously we have deny in terms of denying the opposition time and space, and forcing them as wide as quick as possible, whether that's vertical or horizontal, and we'll get into that in a second. We have deflect, so deflecting the ball into the wide channels 1 and 5 and fill the 4 nearest channels to the ball, all around horizontal compactness. And then we have defend, which is obviously win the ball cleanly or force the opposition into mistake, where we can then obviously get control of the ball and start our attacks. But that's effectively all our info around the defensive organisation. And just to get on to the next part in terms of what we're kind of going to work on today in terms of this session 5 and our defensive organisation. And I just wanted to get into the players. Like I mentioned before, we're a high pressing team and we'll high press as much as we can. And obviously, like that suits our game model and our kind of style of play and how we want to play. We want to win the ball back as quick as possible. So having that defensive transition, and then if we move into defensive organisation, we want to be high pressing team as much as possible. But it's important that we develop the players into good pitch habits, especially around the compact states. So starting off with vertical compactness. So vertical compactness is the distance calculated between our highest player and our deepest player on the pitch, and that's not including the goalkeeper. So effectively, that's our defensive line and our attacking line. Our target is to work between 25 to 35 metres from our forward line to defensive line. Good vertical distances will see units working between 8 and 11 metres. How do we achieve this? Well, we use confrontation lines on the pitch and use the dimensions of the pitch to collectively recognise and be vertically compact. So as you can see here, so we've got like a confrontation line in terms of a high press. We've stuck mid press in there just to give you, obviously, to give you an idea of the mid area of the pitch, but obviously then we have the confrontation line in terms of a low press as well. So that confrontation line for high press, as you can see there, our attacking players are on that line, and then our defensive line is in and around the halfway line, which will give us around that kind of 25 to 35 metres from defensive line to forward line. And once you've got that kind of those vertical compactness, it doesn't matter where you are on the pitch. So you can be in the middle of the pitch, or like we like to talk about, being lower in the pitch. It's exactly the same wherever you are on the pitch, and that's the same as if you move side to side as well, which we'll get onto in a second. But it's really important that obviously you try and keep those distances as much as possible, and keep those gaps in between, or keep those distances and those gaps in between down to a minimum in terms of your players, because this helps you in terms of your attacking as well. Because when you're attacking, if you can maintain these similar distances, especially vertically, then you've got an opportunity in defensive transition to step forward and win the ball. And if not, you're already kind of halfway there to getting into your defensive organisation as well. So pitch habits in terms of horizontal compactness. So what is horizontal compactness? Is the distance calculated between our two widest players on the pitch, so fullback to fullback or wide forward to wide forward. What our target is to work between 35 to 45 metres across the pitch. Good horizontal distances see our units working between 8 to 12 minutes. So how do we achieve this? So we use the 5 channels and the pitch dimensions to help us collectively slide horizontally to maintain good compactness. As you can see there from the picture, just organising those pitch dimensions in terms of the width of the 18-yard box, the width of the 6-yard box, and the distances all across the pitch. Obviously using those 5 channels as well, and trying to fill the 3 nearest channels to the ball, which helps us stay within that distance when we're sliding across the pitch. And again, using those pitch dimensions, so when the ball's central, we can work between the penalty box, which gives us 40 metres across. When the ball moves wide, then we can work between the touchline and the edge of the 6-yard box, or the furthest goalpost. But again, as you can see there, so just moving across now, and then obviously we've got that same distance across, and obviously using the 6-yard box, the furthest goalpost, to make sure that we've got no players on the outside of that. And this can be anywhere on the pitch in relation to the ball. And just making sure that we're constantly moving side to side in a real tight horizontal compactness, just to match up with that vertical compactness as well. So what we were going to do in our particular session, we were just going to do a real dead simple session, and this is Dick Bate inspired. If any of you guys who are listening and watching have ever had the opportunity to be in his presence, unbelievable coach educator in the UK. And this was a speciality of his on one of his defending courses in terms of position specific, and talking about this compactness. But real straightforward in terms of organisation. So we just set the players up as in their defensive shape, and we gave the players a cone each. So they went out on the pitch in relation to the goal in this situation here in the picture. The goalkeeper in a high press, the goalkeeper having the ball. And they just set their cone down in terms of where they thought they would be in terms of setting up for a high press, but in a compact state. Once they put the cone down, we threw the ball in, and we just got them to get into their attacking shape, and shift the ball around the pitch as quickly as possible, and move it nice and sharp from one side to another, and bounce it between the players. On the coach's whistle, they then had to recover as quick as possible to their cone in terms of their defensive compact shape. And then once they were there, we'd shout out one of the colours of the mannequins, so it could be yellow, red, blue or green, and then they just have to shift across the pitch and close down that particular place. As you can see here, they've recovered to the cones. Now we're going to shout a colour, so they just shift across and defend that particular colour. And they might shift across again in terms of the blue this time, so they're going to shift across and continuously keep that compact state and keep that those horizontal and vertical compactness as much as possible. Then we throw the ball back in and they play again, they get into attacking shape, and then we'd continue to work those reactions and obviously working on that compact state. And obviously we gave them detail in and around that as well. So when we just worked through a couple of scenarios, so we worked high in the pitch like you can see here in the video, and then we worked lower in the pitch as well, and we just spent about 6 to 8 minutes high in the pitch and 6 to 8 minutes low in the pitch with the 10 players that we had, and we just moved through the scenarios nice and quickly. And then obviously moved on into the last part of our session, which was for the players back in that 3v3 tournament. But let's have a look at the players doing this live. And I'll just go through and give you little bits of the detail that I gave to the players as we're moving through this. So as you can see here in terms of the high press compactness, so we set the players up in terms of them moving the ball around as quick as possible. We talked about some of the attacking stuff, attacking organisation stuff in terms of our link passes that we use, which I'll show you later in the coaching journey. But we just move the ball around nice and quickly. 2 touches max if you can. If the ball was short, we said to the player to run onto it, and there you go, whistle goes, and then bang, they're straight into the defensive shape in terms of the yellow cones. And then we talked about if the goalkeeper's got the ball, so moving forward together as a team, see how high the defensive line is there. Back to the cones again, and then we got them to shift across the pitch in terms of the mannequin on this side of the pitch. And it was just here where I gave the players a little bit of detail in terms of we were trying to force the play to continue down the side. So just body shape of the wide forward there, just turn the body shape of the wide forward there, so we're still forcing down the side. Talk to the fullback about knowing where his mark is, because his mark's just behind him, but obviously like being ready to jump in terms of if our wide forward got beat. Just adjusting the centre forward so that the centre forward came onto the nearest centre back, and then from that little detail we just race back into our positions. Again, you'll see the players adopting that body shape of side on, ready to move. A little bit of adjustment here in terms of the wide forward, just staying in line again, but keeping that horizontal compactness in relation to the 6-yard box. And again, just making sure that obviously pressing that or putting pressure on that mannequin over there, and making sure the wide forward has got his position, his body shape right to force it wide, and the fullback's in the same thing in terms of being ready to jump in case he gets beat and change his mark. Then obviously we went back to keeping the ball, so moving the ball around again, nice and sharp, 2 touches, shifting it nice and quickly, and getting some of our attacking kind of like link passes going if we could. And then obviously reacting again as quick as possible to the whistle and moving on to those yellow cones again, and then reacting to obviously the colour of the mannequin. In this case, I think it was a blue mannequin over there, which was obviously defending a little bit deeper. But you can see there, just trying to keep that distance from a defensive line to our attacking line around that 25 to 35 metres. And then in part 2, we just did it lower in the pitch. So as you can see here, again, first one was here, it was like we're just working on moving forward as a team. So if the ball went back, we could move forward with it, keeping those distances good again, recovering back onto the cones. And then as soon as they get back on the cones, move into one of the sides to defend. In this particular case, to defending against opposition's wide forward in terms of this mannequin, just getting a little bit of the detail right again. So talking to the wide forward about cutting off the pass back to his mark, but obviously then hopefully defending from like trying to nick the ball from the back in terms of if the fullback's marking him and holding him up, can he defend from the front as well a little bit. And then obviously got the boys to move the ball around again nice and sharp. Couple of little mistakes in terms of like the passing, but just making it 2 touches, working through some of the things that we'll see in attacking organisation in terms of the passes, and moving the ball nice and sharp and quickly, 2 touches, and working through those link passes. And then as soon as the whistle goes again, bang, back onto those yellow cones as quick as possible. And recovering into that defensive shape and just getting that compactness again. And that's it. It's just a good idea. Just showing the players that obviously the distances that we require from our defensive line to our attacking line, how that looks in terms of moving forward if the ball goes back together, and then moving side to side in terms of horizontal compactness if the ball goes to the side as well. But again, just a real simple practice and just giving the players some good ideas about how we can sometimes, not sometimes, but when our high press gets broken or the opposition go long from the goalkeeper or the centre-backs, how we can get into a good, organised, compact state. Okay, guys, that's it for the sessions. So this is our weekly plan now for the next 4 weeks as we move out of the boys being in high school and coming back to us in terms of a normal kind of schedule. So actually on the Monday, the 20th of May, we've actually got the a tryout situation that every club does over here. Don't get me started on it. It's a little bit crazy, but you kind of got to get used to what happens over here when you're from a foreign country. So we didn't have a practice on that particular Monday in terms of the Monday the 20th, but then obviously we were into a regular kind of Monday sessions, Thursday sessions, and then Saturday sessions if we don't have a game. But we've got a couple of sessions coming up in week 4 around in possession, attacking organisation, playing in, and then we did an individual session because we were short a few players on the Saturday, and then from there we started to get into some game situations, and we did a game systems practice, which was really good. For you guys will be interested in that in terms of the 10 systems we work around, which relates to our game model. I'll get into all that when we get there. But as you can see here, we're starting to get into the bones of it now in terms of preparation and getting some games organised and getting some games played as well, which we can do some analysis in terms of, or game plans in terms of setting up for the game, and then obviously analysis when the game's been played as well as we move forward in this coaching journey. Okay guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new to us, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you liked the video, make sure you hit the like button. And if you've got any questions or comments about what you've seen in the coaching journey, or what we've done so far, or some of the practices, or even if you've got some ideas of how you work some of the scenarios and some of the parts of the game model that we've talked about, then we'd love to hear about it in the comments. And we do reply to every comment as much as we can, so make sure you stick them in there. What's coming up next in week 4? We're going to work through. Got 2 sessions to work through, so we're back to like session 1 now as we're into that 4-week game plan. So we've got session 1 around attacking organisation, playing in. We've got session 2 in terms of the in possession and some individual development, which we are massively into in terms of what we do at position specific. Most of our curriculums around the individual and small scenarios until the players get into the game model kind of ages. So we are huge on individual player development. And what I want to do in the next one as well is give you a little bit of a position-specific insight into our website and the player development program we have on there. So we have on our website we have a team coaches section for coaches to go through all of our curriculums and game models, etc. But we also have a player development program for players as well. So if you're a coach and you are following our curriculums and our game model, and you want your players to work away from training sessions on the same stuff, then we have a player development program on our website for that as well. So you can get all your players to sign up, and then they can go away and work on all the exact things that one we talk about on the position specific website, but one obviously you'll be talking about if you're following our team coaches curriculums as well. But all that's to look forward to in week 4. Until then, see you soon.